Hi.
Hello, everyone. We are live. Welcome,
Yay.
welcome.
Here we are.
Yes, here we are. We're back. We're so glad that technology is on our side this evening, so thank goodness for that.
Of course.
My name is Heather Kreider, and tonight we are happy to welcome you to Cannabis Live with Heather and Amanda. So we're going to be discussing a few exciting things with you tonight, some basic information, but great information for those just starting out in the cannabis world. So again, my name is Heather, and we're going to be discussing the difference between hemp and marijuana. Actually, the similarities, a lot of, between hemp and marijuana. And we're excited to get started. But first, we want to welcome Amanda back for our live feed tonight. And she's our amazing educator here at Hempfield Botanicals and Hempfield Apothecary. So welcome, Amanda.
Hi. Good to be here. I'm excited to get started and hopefully have some interaction and see some interest and hear some questions and comments and just let us know you're listening.
Yes. And Amanda, you're down in Texas right now, right?
I am. I'm in Dallas, actually. And if anybody saw last week, a week ago right now, when I went live to introduce myself, I was standing outside with a t-shirt on. And it was about, like our 6th or 7th day of actual fall weather. And that's over now. And we're having a little winter. And it's like 40 degrees and raining. And then I know, but fall's coming back on Friday, so you just never know.
I know. It's like Pennsylvania weather. In Pennsylvania, we're kind of the same way. So before we get started, I just wanted to, again, briefly introduce myself, and then I would like Amanda to introduce herself as well. So, again, my name is Heather Kreider. I am a co-founder at Hempfield Botanicals and Hempfield Apothecary. As you know, I am a registered nurse. My background is in orthopedic trauma, traumatic brain injuries, stroke, spinal cord injuries, and of course, chronic pain, patients dealing with chronic pain. And I myself am a chronic pain sufferer as well. So I'm also a licensed esthetician. I've written for numerous publications, Lancaster County Physician Magazine, Dermoscope Magazine, multiple spa, trade, wellness magazines as well. And then Amanda and I actually met on a panel, a CBD panel at one of our trade shows in Miami and Long Beach. So that's where I first met Amanda, and we hit it off, and it's just been a fun ride since then. So I'm excited to get started. But most importantly, again, I'm a cannabis activist and educator as well, and also a Pennsylvania medical marijuana card holder as well, patient. So Amanda, do you want to give us a few little
Yeah, I'll give you
are?
a short one. I think I spent a lot of time doing this last week, but I did forget to mention how you and I met each other. So I'm glad that you included that. Yeah, we hit it off and knew that we would somehow collaborate from Texas and Pennsylvania somehow. And here we are forced, all of us, to collaborate virtually right now. So it works out beautifully, actually, for us. But I am an avid cannabis educator and activist. So in Texas, the activist part is extremely important because there's only so much educating you can do before people are just frustrated because we don't have a lot of access. So I'm very involved in cannabis reform here in our state. I actually spent the afternoon yesterday at my state rep's office talking about the new bill that she's going to author, and I'm excited about that. But the way that laws are made in Texas is very different than other states. So when everyone thinks that Texas is just, living in the dark ages and we're so behind in our cannabis laws, it isn't because that's what the citizens want. It's because how the laws are made it's just very different. So I'm passionate about that. I'm a licensed esthetician. I've been in the treatment room and been an educator for estheticians for 15 years, and I also teach cosmetic chemistry. So both of us being estheticians, and then both of us being cannabis advocates. That's how Heather and I met, sitting on a panel for those two worlds colliding. And I have been involved in lots of publications and podcasts in my industry, skincare industry and cannabis industry. And it's always interesting to me how the two worlds do sort of collide, because spa is such a wellness industry, as is cannabis. So that's a little bit about me. Last week was a lot about me.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here with us. So thank you ahead of time. But let's first get started why we're all here, first of all. So we want to know what the difference is between hemp and marijuana. So can you tell us the difference between two?
Yeah, I can tell you the difference, but Mother Nature wouldn't really tell you there's much difference. Legally, there's an enormous amount of difference. And then, of course, when we use the terms marijuana and hemp now, we really do mean two different things. But essentially, they are the same plant. They're both Cannabis sativa L. And the difference is one is very high THC and one is higher in CBD if you produce it for flower and for medicine. Hemp is most commonly used for industrial purposes now. But both of the plants genetically have a tendency to grow tall and have narrow leaves. And way back when, Cannabis sativa L was named after, we knew of these two types of plants. We knew there was a hemp that was grown in cooler climates, and that tend to be produced for industrial purposes, like rope and fiber, and it grew really long and really strong. And it was a very, very important commodity. And even here in the States, it was used as for those industrial purposes. There's in fact some towns in the United States named after hemp because of that, like Hempfield, Pennsylvania, and Hemphill, Texas, and those are the only ones I can remember. But there's several. So that was the purpose of that type of Cannabis sativa L, hemp. When it was grown in warmer climates, it was typically more of a psychoactive product. It would produce higher THC levels, and it was used for ceremonial purposes and medicinal purposes. And although they were the same plants, the climate had a great influence on how they grew and how they were used. So those two plants, as we now use the differentiation of marijuana and hemp sort of just for our own benefit, and absolutely for the benefit of regulation and laws. So now if you refer to hemp, it's going to be 0.3% THC or less, and if you refer to marijuana, it's 0.3% or higher, and more likely 10% or higher. So those are not something that Mother Nature decided. Mother Nature did not say, oh, well, if it's 0.31%, it's going to be marijuana. And if it's under 0.31%, then it's going to be hemp. We did that. We have sort of co-evolved with this plant. And I say co-evolved because we've changed it. We've changed it. By changing it, though, it has also changed us, right? Yes. So now we know how to manipulate this plant for our own purpose. So, and we know that because we have bred so many marijuana plants to be higher and higher and higher and higher THC. And then we have bred those industrial hemp use plants to be stronger, taller, and more industrious. So, and then where does the everyone, whenever I start the speech, I always get someone to say, but what about indica? What about indica? So cannabis indica was actually named later. It was discovered to be growing in colder climates. So it grew shorter and denser and had more broad leaves. It had definitely had the euphoric intoxication effects that THC offers you in the cannabis sativa L, but it just grew a little differently because it was in a different climate. So if I want to combine those two plants, the properties of those two plants, they both have THC. So I'm not going to get anything new there. They both have varying levels of other cannabinoids and terpenes, but the advantage to combining the sativa, cannabis sativa, and the cannabis indica is because they came from different regions, a warm climate and a cold climate. They grew differently, and if you can combine them, and that's what we call hybrids, then you're going to have a more resilient plant that can be grown in more variety of climates, even in like climate controlled areas. It's nice to be able to grow a plant that grows faster, and it doesn't have to grow as tall to be mature, because then you can harvest and produce more. So that's what I mean by co-evolved. We've really sort of figured out how to manipulate this plant to be what we need it to be. Let me touch on the way that we produce the high THC and the way that we produce the flower, because that's what sets it apart from hemp today. So and not all plants do this. In fact, it's more likely that they don't. But in the cannabis family, there are male and female plants. And the male plant produces pollen that fertilizes the female plant, which she in turn produces seeds. And then that's how they procreate, essentially. So in order to attract a pollinating male, the female plant produces flower, and in the cannabis plant, there are cannabinoids like THC, CBD. There are cannabinoids in the whole plant, but most of it is in the flower. So when the female produces flower, she produces the sticky, resinous, very, very, very heavily scented flower to attract the pollination. Well, if you take the male away and she can't get pollinated, then she's going to produce more resin and more oils and more aromatic substance and larger flowers. They're going to keep growing and growing and growing and try to become pollinated. So essentially, the flowers that we have access to now in legal dispensaries are unpollinated, unfertilized female flowers. They never got a date, so they just kept trying to get a date,
right?
and trying to get a date until they were mature enough that we harvest them. So we have manipulated this plant to be unrecognizable from even like your mom's weed, essentially. So
it's basically, isn't it? Yeah. It's basically the same thing with any vegetable that's grown, any plant that's grown.
A lot of them.
It's been modified.
Absolutely, a lot of them have, certainly. So we have done a pretty good job figuring out how to get the best of this plant for our own benefit. One thing that I find when I talk, I try to sort of pay attention to the questions that I get, so that maybe this time I can answer the questions before you have to ask them. Yeah. But one thing that I get a lot of pushback on when I answer this question is, well, some plants that I buy are sativa and some plants that I buy are indica. And sometimes I just really want a hybrid. And sometimes I want a 50-50 hybrid. And sometimes I want a 70-30 hybrid. Well, my personality is to just tell you that's all kind of nonsense, essentially, only because when I say sativa or indica today, in today's product, all I am doing is implying to you a certain feeling, reaction, a physical sensation, the physiology that takes place in your body, that we expect this plant to give you this sort of feeling. So indica and sativa are really only just implying to you what they think, and by they, I mean the growers or the marketing or even the lab, when they look at the breakdown of it, what they expect the feeling to be produced by that. And the same plant can vary obviously from harvest to harvest, but also if I have the same plant, the same crop, and I harvest it today, and I send half of it, and I want to call it Pineapple Express, and I send it to your dispensary, I send it to another dispensary, they can call it something else. They're going to either look at the breakdown of the cannabinoids and terpenes, or they're going to actually try the product to determine whether it's going to be labeled as an indica, a sativa, or a hybrid. And that's okay, because that's kind of all we've got.
Yeah.
There are a lot of companies doing a lot of innovative things right now to sort of do lab analysis of the components, so that we have a more consistent product. But being federally illegal and states still being relatively new to this, we don't have a serving size or an expectancy milligram, how much of a milligram will affect how much of a body weight. We don't really have that consistent. So the best thing you can do is just sort of understand where it came from, what it could possibly be, how it was possibly interpreted from the lab results, and try it yourself. But I just feel like lots of people will have the experience of saying, well, the last time I tried White Widow, I felt like this. But this time when I got White Widow, I felt like that. Yeah. And what's up? It must be me. It's probably not you. It's probably not you. It's the inconsistency of labeling and cultivation.
Right.
And so
if, just like any plant, Amanda, and you'll agree with this, like any plant, you can't control nature. So when we produce our products for Hempfield Botanicals, when we get our raw materials in, our cannabinoids are all over the place, depending on the batch. And I think you'll even agree too, over time, the cannabinoids can change. So they could get a test in the beginning and the THC count could be at this amount, but that THCA then eventually in time will convert. And so they change. So it's difficult. It's a difficult industry for that.
Yeah. And I actually find that being sort of an amateur herbalist as well, this is what I respect the most about nature, that ultimately it's in control. We're not in control. 100%. We're not in control of it. So just sort of understanding, to get back to the original question, just sort of understanding that cannabis sativa L was one thing, and from that we got what we now call marijuana, and also what we now call hemp. And then there was cannabis indica from a different climate that has been very, very integrated with cannabis sativa L to become what we mostly just refer to as marijuana. It's the arbitrary numbers of the 0.3% that everyone's so familiar with. Those arbitrary numbers were just assigned sort of to maintain some type of regulation. I don't know how it is. I know that the federal definition is still 0.3%, but for hemp growing in Texas, it can't be 0.31%. And that's a hot crop, and then that's a problem. But it's those arbitrary numbers had to be assigned probably to give some differentiation between hemp and marijuana, especially in states that it's not legal. But if it were all federally legal, then we probably wouldn't have quite the issues with those little arbitrary numbers.
Right.
So, but what most of us consider marijuana to be for one purpose and hemp to be for another purpose, until we now talk about how great CBD medicine is. And it's not that marijuana can't have CBD, it can, but it's bred that way. And typically in cannabis, all cannabis plants, whether it's hemp or whether it's marijuana, you will have a dominant high THC, low CBD, or high CBD, low THC. You don't ever really breed a plant and it's really balanced. It's quite unusual and quite hard to manipulate. And it's not that it doesn't exist, and I can't say that it doesn't because I haven't seen every possible cultivar there is. But if you think about, not everybody watching is my age or your age, but if you think about the cannabis that we purchased, even in the early to mid 90s, which would have been either not in this country or it would have been black market, it was not nearly the THC level that it is now. And that has been mostly driven just by the market, right? Just by people wanting it to be higher and higher THC. It's not because the plant really just evolved to suddenly start producing high THC. We did that. We did that.
Yeah. Interesting.
So,
yeah, it's pretty amazing. Well, that is some great information. And I think we're about ready to kind of wrap it up. If you have,
awesome.
do you have anything else that you want to add? You're good. I think we
No,
covered it.
Yeah, I kind of gave it to you.
Well, it was amazing. Yeah, we really, really appreciate it. Amanda, I was checking to see if there's any questions. I do not see any questions right now,
Okay.
but this post will continue. It will be available on the pages, on our pages. So you're more than welcome to post a comment even after the live session is over. And we'll be more than happy to help answer those questions for you. Just a few reminders. So as we're wrapping up, we don't want you to forget. We want you to come back every other Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We'll be doing more Cannabis Live education. Our next stream is actually going to be on Wednesday, November the 11th. And again, it's at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that next time we'll be discussing the endocannabinoid system, the ECS.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be touching on probably a little bit of the endocannabinoid deficiency as well. We can talk a little bit about that as well. And it's amazing. So we're going to fill you in on a lot of that. So we really hope to see you all back here in 2 weeks. Make sure to follow our page. Be sure to set your notifications to alert you when we go live. And we just thank you so much for joining us. It was really educational and fun, and we cannot wait for you to join us again so that we can help you on your cannabis journey.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks all.